privilege to speak here again at the Crowley Seventh-day Adventist Church. I didn't realize last time I spoke here that ASI Southwestern Union would give me the privilege of speaking for the Divine Hour. But our topic today is Christ's ministry of healing. And in the setting that we're speaking of today, life expectancy has actually been going down in America year after year. Disease is increasing. 45% of children have a chronic disease as we're speaking here today. 45% of children. That includes allergies, autoimmune disease, mental illness, which of course is at an all-time high in our young people. And as the text alluded to, our scripture reading for today, Christ spent more time healing than he did preaching. And what are his people, if we are to model Christ as our example, what should we be spending more time doing? We should actually be spending more time in the healing ministry. Now, before we begin our topic today, just a little background. I give you greetings from Weimar University. Weimar University has several unique features, but I'd like to just read a text that is prominent in every course that is given at Weimar. And it was actually the memory text for Sabbath School today, for those of you who memorized the adult Sabbath School lesson. And this is life eternal, that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom you have sent. Every course at Weimar University starts out with knowing God better through the study of. So we don't just study chemistry, we study about knowing God better through the study of chemistry, or whatever the topic is. We're the only regionally accredited university in America that has not just one, no other accredited university has a lifestyle center associated with it besides Weimar. But Weimar has two lifestyle centers, the New Start program for physical diseases and the Depression and Anxiety Recovery program for mental diseases. Our accreditors just came to re-accredit us, gave us far more years than we were anticipating they would, because we also have a lean budget. We are the only Adventist university in America that accepts zero government funds. We could, because we're regionally accredited, but we refuse to accept government funds because it turns out the government cannot tell you how to educate if they don't give you any funds. The Constitution actually bars that, so that allows us to be purely unapologetically biblical as well as uncompromisingly scientific. We don't have to figure out what is the government going to think about this. We just educate. And as a result, there are books in our library that you won't find in any other accredited university. Scientific books written by Harvard professors that are banned. You can't even get them on Amazon. But they will be at Weimar University, because we're not only unapologetically biblical, we're uncompromisingly scientific. The world talks about science, but they like biased science. They like politically correct science. And they like cultural, quotes, science. But true science always lines up with the truths of the Word of God. So as a result, we don't have huge amounts of money like most universities. In fact, we found out even Harvard cannot survive without the government. They're the wealthiest university in America. And last year, they didn't have all their government funds cut off. They just had a few of the government funds, and they had to borrow $150 million to make payroll. Government propping up our universities has produced education that is not aligned with true education today. But Weimar has been able to survive without government funds. In fact, a lot of university presidents, when I go to places, they're shocked. You don't receive government funds? How do you exist? How do you exist? Well, it's God and his people that allow us to exist. So we also have total community involvement. Total community involvement. Every week, our campus empties out to do service to our community. Volunteer service in helping people through Christ's threefold ministry. There are universities that might do it once a semester, but not every week, and not where the entire university empties out staff and faculty. We're the only accredited university in the world, I am told, that has an exclusively plant-based cafeteria. One of the evidence is that we are being uncompromisingly scientific. And every student graduates at Weimar University debt-free to the government or to a bank or to any other organization. So they are not only happy that they've completed their degree, but it's an especially happy time. Now, they might owe some relatives, they might owe some parents, they might even owe the Weimar University's Worthy Student Fund, but it's not a chain around the neck. It's not something that is going to be a problem for them, per se. So, we also have the highest acceptance that I know of into U.S. medical schools. 94.6% of our pre-med and pre-dent students get into dental and medical school. The MCAT scores and DAT scores are amazingly high because of the unapologetically biblical principles. In fact, when chemistry is taught, it's not just chemistry principles, it's theological principles that match up with the chemical principles. And the MCAT's always giving them new questions that they've never seen before. And when they see that question, they'll remember the biblical principle first, then the chemical principle, and they'll solve the problem. We've had people that have never missed a single question on chemistry on the MCAT and the DAT at Weimar University. We also have a 100% passage rate of the NCLEX for many years. We've never had a student graduate from our nursing program that has not become a licensed nurse. It's possible to get your BSN in nursing and ASN in nursing and never become licensed. And we've actually had to treat people in our program for that. They haven't gone to Weimar University, but they've gone to other places. And that's just a few of the unique attributes of Weimar. And I want you to know that all of you can actually take advantage, no matter what your age, in regards to 2 courses that we teach. I'm hoping that today opens up your mind to be a true medical missionary, either volunteer or full-time. We have a 1-semester health program. Physicians, dentists, nurses can go through that. We just had a nurse, rather famous nurse from another university that did that 6-month course, and it totally changed the trajectory of her nursing. And now she is working at the Nedley Clinic, which also has a lot to do with lifestyle medicine and the depression and anxiety recovery program. And then we also have an online counseling degree. In fact, our counseling degree, I'll speak about it here a little bit. Our counseling degree, you can become a licensed counselor. Actually, the Board of Behavioral Sciences approved us in the state of California, licensed counselor, while being 100% unapologetically biblical. And that is tough in regards to counseling today. We'll talk to you about the problems. One of our recent graduates who's actually working at our program, she called every other Christian school, higher education school in America, and asked them a simple question about a case scenario. What would you do with someone who is suffering and breaking one of God's laws, and it's contributing to the suffering? She actually named the law. I won't talk about it here, but you can probably maybe figure out what law has been under attack by politics and governments and universities in particular. It's one of the last 5 commandments. And of course, the devil is gearing up for attacking one of the first 4 commandments pretty soon. So he's practicing on this one. And everyone, including Liberty University, who's the most famous Christian university in America, stated that you will have to leave your religious biases aside in counseling that patient. What? There is science backing up the religion. We can't even talk about the science of how much better they would get if they actually are aware of the problems that come from breaking this commandment to their mental health. So she asked it at Weimar University and got a very different answer. Oh yes, we have a whole several days of a course on that, of how to be able to get to the root of the problem and produce a desired result. So let's begin. Christ's ministry of healing. Notice this: never does our merciful God turn from the soul that in sincerity seeks him for help. Christ has been pretty disappointed in humanity, but he's never regretted creating us, we're told. And even though we've gone our own way, even though we've done our own thing, and even when we begin to suffer from it as a result, he does not turn from the soul that in what? In sincerity seeks him for help. I'm just recognizing that you don't have on the screen what I have on my screen. He is our refuge in sickness as in health. I might ask for some booth people to come up. I think it's important with the words that are being discussed that you actually are able to see them as well as the reference from this. And some ask, why don't we see miracles today wrought by the servants of Christ like we see in the gospel and the book of Acts? We're told Christ is the same compassionate physician now that he was during his earthly ministry. In him there is a healing balm for every disease, restoring power for every infirmity. His disciples in this time are to pray for the sick as verily as the disciples of old prayed, and recoveries will follow, for the prayer of faith will save the sick. Thank you. Just a simple switch, and it wasn't my computer. The prayer of faith shall do what? So let's talk a little bit about what this prayer of faith is. Now, first of all, why don't we see miracles as readily by Christ's followers today? The book of Revelation tells us the beast was captured, with him the false prophet who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast. Miracles that what? Deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who worship his image. 3 times in the book of Revelation, we're told that the wrong side is going to be deceiving as a result of works of miracles. And then we're told this: the way in which Christ's work was to preach and to relieve suffering by miraculous works of healing, but I am instructed that we cannot now work in this way, for Satan will exercise his power by working miracles. God's servants today could not work by means of miracles because spurious works of healing claiming to be divine will be wrought. For this reason, the Lord has marked out a way in which his people are to carry forward work of physical healing combined with what? The teaching of the word. Sanitariums are to be established, and with these institutions are to be connected workers who will carry forward genuine medical missionary work. Sanitariums are particularly raised up for miraculous works of healing at this time. By the way, when our accreditors came and saw those 2 sanitariums and our students rotating through that, they said, we have never seen such practical education being done in this threefold setting anywhere that we've been. And they were amazed at the laboratory that those students are able to interface with and see this happening. We're told many persons bring disease upon themselves by their what? Self-indulgence. They have not lived in accordance with natural law or the principles of strict purity. Others have disregarded the laws of health in their habits of eating or habits of what else? Drinking, dressing, or working. Often some form of vice is the cause of feebleness of mind or body. So ignoring health laws costs us dearly. Should these persons gain the blessing of health, she's talking about the blessing of health in response to prayer, many of them would continue to pursue the same course of needless or heedless transgression of God's natural and spiritual laws, reasoning that if God heals them in answer to prayer, they are at liberty to continue their unhealthful practices and to indulge perverted appetite without restraint. If God were to work a miracle in restoring these persons to health, he would be doing what? Encouraging sin. This is one of the reasons why Ellen White did not pray for every person that she was told to pray for. Because she wanted to know, are they in sincerity willing to forsake what brought disease upon them in the first place? We don't want it to be encouraging sin. It is labor loss to teach people to look to God as the healer of their infirmities unless they are taught also to lay aside what? Unhealthful practices. In order to receive his blessing and answer to prayer, they must cease to do evil and learn to do well. This is all part of the prayer of faith. And there's a term that we use with faith often today in our church, or a phrase that's very important. It's blank by faith. What's the blank? Righteousness by faith. This is the faith that brings right doing. But when people come to us for healing, sometimes it's more than prayer that's needed. And God works through these modalities. Christ himself worked through this in regards to a blind man that was brought to him. On one occasion, Christ anointed the eyes of a blind man with clay and bade him go wash in the pool of Siloam. He went his way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. The cure could be wrought only by the power of the great healer, yet Christ made use of the simple agencies of nature. If we live according to his word, every precious promise he has given will be fulfilled to us. We are undeserving of his mercy, but as we give ourselves to him, he receives us. He will work for and through those who follow him. Hezekiah prayed fervently that he would be healed after the prophet told him that he had a terminal illness and would soon die. He said, "It's too soon, Lord. I have so much more to do." And he prayed fervently. And the Lord directed something to be used in his healing. One word from God would have healed Hezekiah instantly, but special directions were given. Let them take a lump of figs and lay it for a paste upon the boil, and he shall recover. There are natural remedies used in the Bible. 45 different plant species are mentioned in the Bible. Only 6 species are mentioned directly as medicinal plants in the Bible. One of them is figs. And when figs are cut at the stem, they exude a thick, milky substance called fig latex. The study shows that fig latex has a strong anti-cancer effect on liver and brain cancers. And it also worked in Hezekiah's healing. Another plant for medical purposes, nard, the calming herb that has been used as an anticonvulsive and anti-epileptic. It can also enhance learning in youth and has neuroprotective properties. Been well proven today. Hyssop is used for digestive and intestinal problems, including liver and gallbladder conditions, intestinal pain, intestinal gas, colic, loss of appetite. It's also used for respiratory problems, including the common cold and respiratory infections, sore throat, and asthma. You may have heard of the balm of Gilead. That was used as a treatment for inflammation of superficial skin conditions, psoriasis, eczema, sunburns, rashes, insect bites, chapped skin. Mandrake has powerful tropane alkaloids. We get scopolamine from that, levsin or hyoscyamine, atropine. It can have an intense effect on the central nervous system, and it also can be used as a painkiller. And then finally, Indian frankincense. This was frankincense from the east that was given to Christ at his birth. Boswellia serrata comes from that. Boswellia serrata has powerful anti-inflammatory properties. We've seen wonderful healings take place. We had a girl come to our program, 32 years old. She was severely depressed, had significant issues, but her issues, in part, started when she was at one of our universities on the gymnastic team, and she was thrown up in the air as part of the routine, but it was rushed, and way up in the air came down on her foot and ankle, and it broke the foot and ankle. She had to have multiple surgeries. She could not walk without pain. Severe depression came about, not just that as a single cause, but there were other causes. Now she's married and has small children, and her husband and her agreed that she should come to the program. Well, physical exercise is actually better for your brain than it is your body. And so I said, have you ever tried Boswellia for this ankle condition? She says, my surgeon says there's no cartilage left. There's nothing that can be done. I'm just going to have pain. And I can't really exercise. Can't walk without pain. I said, well, let's try the Boswellia if you're willing. She goes, I want to try whatever might be helpful, but she says, I always look things up and research it. I've never heard of that before, and you just took my phone from me. So can I have my phone back so I can research it? I said, sure, you can go ahead and have your phone back. And then she says, you know what? You took it away. I came here because I trust Weimar in the process. Just go ahead and give it to me. 3 days later, she was walking without pain. She ended up winning the step test of the most steps of anyone in the program. And 20 weeks later, we talk about the 20-week aspect of the program, she sent me a picture of her crossing the marathon finish line. She thought she had been miraculously healed, and so she stopped taking the Boswellia, and the pain came back again, and all of that. Now she's not getting off of it. And we're told God has put in our power to obtain knowledge of the laws of life. This knowledge has been placed within our reach for use. We should employ every facility for the restoration of health, taking advantage, every advantage possible, working in harmonies with natural laws. And then this statement, those who seek healing by prayer should not neglect to make use of the remedial agencies within their reach. It is not a denial of faith to use such remedies as God has provided to alleviate pain and to aid nature in her work of restoration. It is no denial of faith to cooperate with God and to place themselves on the condition most favorable to recovery. By the way, how can you know if something is one of God's remedies or it's one of mankind's remedies or the devil's remedies? One of the ways is, what side effects does it have? God's remedies don't have side effects. They're not risky. There was no risk in taking the Boswellia. That's why I was fined for her not looking it up, because she wouldn't have found risk factors in regards to how we were utilizing that Boswellia serrata. And it's amazing how much of humanity neglects things that only have benefits and then turns to things that have risks and benefits. I've heard some people unwisely state that marijuana is a plant that God has blessed to help mental disease. Well, does marijuana have side effects? Absolutely it does. It increases the risk of psychosis 12-fold for those who have the gene for psychosis. Psychosis is a fate worse than death. Why are you sitting there trying to balance something when it has such serious risks? It's a frontal lobe suppressant, has all sorts of issues. Well, I just use it for the CBD, someone says. Well, guess what? We have a urine test in our office that will light up if there's THC in your urine, and everyone who thinks they use a CBD product without THC, the THC lights up. You can't get the THC all out of there. And the THC is indeed the risky component. If you just want the CBD, just take Selexon. Selexon is the oil that comes from the lavender plant, and it has the same benefits of marijuana without the risks, and it's only 20% of the cost. But people are totally neglecting the healthy remedies and going for the things that have benefits and risks. We have individuals that know alcohol is bad for most people, but they still take it because it helps their anxiety short term. Short-term gain, long-term problem. And it's going to produce significant issues. And sometimes they need remedies. There's an individual, speaking of alcohol, there's an individual that came through our program a few years ago, 30-year-old girl. She came for depression and anxiety, but primarily for alcoholism. She had been to 10 different alcohol treatment programs. One of them would cost her $100,000. Actually, it didn't cost her, it cost her parents that. As an alcoholic, she didn't have money. You know, and so her parents did have means, and they were from the local Auburn area. And then she heard through TCI, Total Community Involvement, she was interacting with our students, and they said, why don't you come to WEMAR, the Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program? So she checked it out, and she asked her parents, can I go here? This would have been treatment program number 11. They said, how much is it? She says, less than $10,000. And they said, no way. $100,000 didn't help you. $10,000 is just going to be a total waste. How long does that program last? 10 days. What? 4 months didn't help you. 10 days. What a joke. No way are we paying for that. Well, she was insistent, and she wanted them to come up and see the program and see it in action. So the parents came up, and they finally decided, you know, she wants to go. She wants to have success. We don't want to be the reason why she's not having success. We'll cough up the $10,000. She was there for 10 days. We found out she was a serious undermethylator. That's a gene that goes with alcoholism. And it turns out that effects of that bad gene can be covered simply by taking 2 natural remedies together. It was actually SAMe and saffron. It has to be in the right dose. And we gave that to her, and then she also came across the portion of the program that wasn't in any of those programs, and that was the spiritual component. We'll talk about that in a minute. That is crucial in regards to Christ's healing ministry. And in 10 days, she had recovered. How can I say that? Because it's been 4 years, and she hasn't drank any alcohol. She's now married to a man that she was much wiser with now that she had a frontal lobe. She has 2 children now, and she'll come and tell her story at times. What does this mean? Natural means used in accordance with God's will bring about what? Supernatural results. We ask for a miracle, and the Lord directs the mind to some simple remedy. And sometimes the remedy is hydrotherapy. Naaman was given the opportunity to heal his condition through hydrotherapy, and he said, no way. He said, this is dirty water. Syria has clean water. This is ridiculous. I'm not getting in there. Plus, it's cold. But his workers that were with him said, it's not that hard. Why don't you just go ahead and do what the prophet said? and 7 dips in the Jordan River, and his skin came out clean. He would have rejected that healing, actually not so much because of the leprosy per se, but because his mind not being willing to do something that simple was the problem. Ellen White says, sickness of the mind prevails everywhere. 9/10 of the diseases from which men suffer have their foundation here. Roy Baumeister, one of the most quoted researchers in all the world from Stanford, now states that lack of self-control is the #1 problem in all the world. Heart disease kills more people at a premature age than any other disease in the United States of America. Multiple jumbo jets going down every day due to heart disease. We all accept it as if, oh well, this is just what happens, heart disease. But we not only know how to prevent it, we know how to reverse it through nutrition and lifestyle measures. There shouldn't be any deaths from cardiovascular disease and atherosclerosis. So what's the problem? It's not heart disease, it's lack of self-control. Diabetes, is it going up or going down in our society? It's going up. Yes, genetics loads the gun for type 2 diabetes, but it's a lifestyle that pulls the trigger, and we know how to advise a lifestyle where if you have the bad gene for diabetes, you will never get it. Why is diabetes going up? Lack of self-control. Sexually transmitted diseases. I remember in the 1990s when a couple of progressive universities, government-funded universities that were encouraged to do things like this, performed a small study. And the conclusion of the study was, by the way, it was methodologically flawed. The conclusion of the study was that if you make pornography widely available and condoms widely available, you would dramatically reduce sexually transmitted diseases and rape in this country. So that's what they did. Condoms widely available, pornography free at a click. And what has happened to sexually transmitted diseases? It's skyrocketed. Rape has also skyrocketed. 80% of strokes are preventable if we would put into action what we know can prevent them. Sometimes it's just taking a blood thinner. Alcoholism, going up in our society. And by definition, the alcoholic knows it's a problem but doesn't think he's going to be able to get by with it. He actually thinks he needs it. Murder rates going up, lack of self-control. And once people recover from depression and anxiety in our programs, and if they begin to suffer from it again, it will be for one reason: lack of self-control. Cancer. By the way, cancer kills more people under the age of 85 than heart disease does, and Harvard states 80% of cancers are preventable if we would put into action today what is necessary. Sometimes it's just quitting drinking. A lot of people don't realize alcohol is actually a carcinogen. It increases the risk of a number of cancers. Unwanted pregnancy, lack of self-control. Adultery and divorce, often due to lack of self-control. You've got a good brain, but you're not achieving in college. Lack of self-control. Financial failure, often due to lack of self-control. Relationship problems, lack of self-control. And the #1 addiction today in the modern world, some of you were here the other day to hear about it. For those of you that weren't here, tell me what the #1 addiction is of adults. It's technology. They know it's causing problems, but they can't seem to get away from it. Lack of self-control. But it's not a new problem. Paul talked about it. I don't really understand myself. I want to do what is right, but I what? I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. There's another power within me that is at war with my mind. This power makes me a slave to sin that is still within me, and maybe one of the most saddest texts of all the Bible. Oh, what a miserable and wretched person I am. Who will free me from this life that is dominated by sin and death? A wretched person, according to Paul, is someone who knows what to do, but is not doing it. Or he knows he shouldn't be doing something, or she shouldn't be doing something, but is doing it. that is wretched. That is a person without self-control. And Baumeister and other researchers have now stated that if you want to live the psychological good life, there's only one way to get there: comprehensive self-control. It will produce the psychological good life in everyone. A lot of people think the good life is making more money. Elon Musk a few weeks ago, I don't know if you noticed what he said, but he did say, the guy that said money doesn't buy happiness knew what he was talking about. He's got more money than anyone else. But what is he indicating? He's not what? He doesn't have comprehensive self-control. That's what leads to the psychological good life. But yet, that is the major problem in the last church. The only other place that word wretched is mentioned in the New Testament is because you say, I am rich, have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and what else? What is it that you don't have if you're naked? You don't have clothes. What clothes in particular was being spoken about here? Christ's robe of righteousness. This is the righteousness by faith that we were mentioning earlier. So if you don't solve the problems of lack of self-control in your life, it could have eternal consequences. That's what Christ is saying to the church in Laodicea. Now, the secular world has also been interested. What is the secret to avoid this wretchedness? And they tell us temperance is the secret. Of course, Weimar is about temperance because we coined the acronym New Start. What does the N stand for? Nutrition, the E, exercise, the W, water, the first S is sunlight, and then T, this is it, temperance. By the way, you can get too much of all those other remedies. The two T's you can't get enough of. The more, the better, according to the studies. What is temperance? Moderation in the things that are healthy and abstinence in the things that are unhealthy. And strict temperance requires comprehensive self-control. The other day I was speaking about this at another clinic on Weimar. Weimar has 2 clinics as well, and so the students, as part of their healing ministry, can rotate through there. And on Saturday morning, they have a health talk for the patients that want to come to the health talk. And I didn't realize the secretary for the governor of the state of California was in attendance. You know, Weimar is not too far away from the Capitol building in Sacramento. And so I was talking about the difference between selective self-control and comprehensive self-control. Everyone has selective self-control. We'll have people come to our program and say, I have no self-control, Dr. Nedley. And I'll find out an area they do have self-control. They're very particular about the soil they put their marijuana plant in. They always water it on time. They've got very good selective self-control in that area. But in other areas of their life, they don't have self-control. So I was telling them about the most famous governor in the state of California that day. Who's the most famous governor ever of the state of California? It's not Governor Newsom. It's not even Governor Reagan. You've said it. Arnold Schwarzenegger. How did he get famous? It's not because he was governor. It's because of bodybuilding. He became Mr. Universe. Does it require meticulous, selective self-control to build up the muscles Arnold did? Oh, yes. You've got to be in the gym when you don't want to be in the gym. No pain, no gain. You've got to be on the right supplements. You've got to be eating the right diet. And even though he had tremendous selective self-control in an area of his life where it was more important to have self-control, when his maid was cleaning his house, he lacked it. And he ended up losing the love of his life due to not having what type of self-control? Comprehensive self-control. And by the way, he was not happy about losing his wife. By the way, he kept it secret for about 18 years. 18 years later, now the adult young man that looks very much like Arnold shows up in the house and says, "Hi, Daddy." And Maria says, "What? What? You have betrayed me. I can't stay with you any longer with this betrayal." He made it very clear he would have rather not been the Terminator He would have rather not been the governor of the state of California. He would have rather not been Mr. Universe if he could have kept his lovely wife, Maria. But he lost the love of his life due to not having comprehensive self-control. After I told that story, his secretary came up. Said, Dr. Nedley, that's not the only area he did not have self-control in. He is a mess. He needs to come to Weimar University. And on the way out the door, she turned around and said, and Governor Newsom should come here too. What is the secret? Proverbs says, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. If you're slow to anger, you're managing your emotions, which is a first step of having self-control. And he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh the city. A commentary is made on this verse. He has conquered self, the strongest foe man has to meet. The highest evidence of nobility in a Christian is what? Self-control. He who can stand unmoved amid a what? Storm of abuse is one of God's heroes. He has conquered self, the strongest foe man has to meet. He who has learned to rule his spirit will rise above the slights, the rebuffs, the annoyances to which we are daily exposed, and these will cease to cast a gloom over his spirit. In other words, you're going to be happy even when your day is not very happy. That's the psychological good life. It comes when you have comprehensive self-control. The man or woman who preserves the balance of the mind when tempted to indulge passion stands higher in the sight of God and heavenly angels than the most renowned general that ever led an army to battle into victory. I've met Christians who say that they've prayed to God that they never sin again, and then they tell me that they keep on sinning. And who gets the blame for that? God often gets the blame for it. By the way, why does God never answer that prayer? If he takes away your power of choice, your freedom of choice, he will take away your ability to love, because love is always a voluntary act. And first of all, God is love. But what he can help us with is to preserve the balance of the mind when tempted to indulge passion. And when a person does that, the lower brain says, I want it, I want it. But the upper brain says, no, this isn't good for you long term. It might produce a dopamine surge short term, but this isn't good, and you're not going to represent God well. That person stands higher in the sight of God and heavenly angels than the most renowned general that ever led an army to battle into victory. In other words, God and the heavenly angels are standing up and cheering. That is my servant. Christ told us how to get there. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. He doesn't criticize anyone for seeking for the good life. There's no criticism of this man seeking for goodly pearls. But when he had found one pearl of great price, he went and sold how much? All that he had and bought it. And the key to self-control is actually self-sacrifice. It's self-sacrificing love. This is a love that human beings don't have. Their love is selfish. God's love is self-sacrificing. And if we open our heart to God's love, which he's willing to fill completely, if we're willing to put our all on the altar, in the parable, I'm sure the one who bought the field that had the one pearl of great price was thought to be kind of crazy. He's selling this. He's selling that. He's selling his house. He's selling his horse. He's selling his tools. What's wrong with this man? He had found one pearl of great price. When we thus give ourselves wholly to him, Christ, with all the treasures of heaven, gives himself to us. We obtain the pearl of great price. And that pearl of great price is comprehensive self-control. God's abounding love and presence in the heart will give the power of self-control and will mold and fashion the mind and character. I went to a conference on how to eliminate coronary artery disease in the 1990s, given by great researchers from all over the world, Ivy League schools, and they predicted within 25 years heart disease would not even be in the top 10 cause of death because this research was solid and was well known. And now it was being spread throughout the world. But it's still the number one cause of death because they didn't tell us how to have self-control. This is why the health message and the gospel going together produces transformation that you can't get by separating them. It's the nicest and most critical work ever given to mortals to deal with minds, we're told. Those who engage in this work should have clear discernment and good powers of discrimination. This is one of the most blessed things that I've been honored to participate in are those with the mental diseases. Mental health support demand is increasing greatly, driven by increased awareness, reduced stigma, and increased incidence of mental illnesses of all types. 122 million Americans live in shortage areas where they can't get good professional counseling. This is one of the reasons why Weimar has started its Masters in Counseling. Research indicates that psychiatrists and psychologists are among the least religious or most atheistic, agnostic compared to other medical specialties in the general population. Studies show psychologists are roughly 5 times more likely to be atheists than the public. Psychiatry often listed as the lowest levels of religious belief among doctors. Here's the problem with that. Robust scientific evidence correlates faith and religious practice with strengthening mental health and preventing suicide and drug and alcohol overdoses. Deaths by suicide in America are 17 times the number of people killed in the terrorist attacks of 9/11. That's every year. Yet women who attend religious services at least weekly are 68% less likely to die from deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdose, or alcohol poisoning. Men 33% likely. And so religious faith should be part of the prescription. There's not a drug on the planet that decreases your incidence of suicide. Even the antidepressants can increase the risk. But it's considered malpractice if you don't offer these drugs sometimes for depressed people. But somehow it's not considered malpractice to let them know about the religious faith and the spirituality and what it can do for their mental health. The same trained experts ordained to heal mental disorders are sometimes the very ones most skeptical toward rescuing the patient with the healing balms of spirituality and religion. And I must also add, natural remedies. They'll be against that too. Profound mismatch exists between proven treatments for mental illness. But yet, in closing, we're told that sanitariums are needed in which successful medical and surgical work can be done. These institutions, conducted in accordance with the will of God, will remove prejudice and call our work into favorable notice. The highest aim of the workers in these institutions, you would think she would say, would be the physical health of the patients. But she says the highest aim is the what? The spiritual health of the patient. Successful evangelistic work can be done in connection with medical missionary work. It is as these lines of work are united that we may expect to gather the most precious fruit for the Lord. Now, for those able to come tomorrow morning, I would encourage you to come. We're going to talk about story after story. Muslims, Hindus, Protestants, Catholics, people that are atheists, agnostics, that would have never come to a church service or an evangelistic series or a Bible study or a Revelation study, that are now full members of God's remnant church because they came to Weimar to a sanitarium to get healed. And they were not only healed physically, they were healed spiritually for eternity. You don't want to miss those stories. But before I close, I do want to state this. Many people are familiar with the next statement I'm going to make, but not this one. This is the setting. The subject of health reform has been presented in the churches, but the light has not been heartily received. The selfish, health-destroying indulgences of men and women have counteracted the influence of the message that is to prepare a people for the great day of God. What is to prepare a people for the great day of God? It's the subject of health reform. If the churches expect strength, they must live the truth which God has given them. Here is the context of this statement. The Lord does not now work to bring many souls into the truth because of the church members who have never been converted and those who were once converted but who have backslidden. What influence would these unconsecrated members have on new converts? Would they not make of no effect the God-given message with which his people are to bear? I'm going to ask you a serious question today, and that is, are you exhibiting comprehensive self-control in your life, particularly regarding health principles? If you are going against health principles in your life, you are getting in the way of the church exploding with exponential membership. Because God's keeping those people away because they're going to be detracted from having their all on the altar for Christ because of your influence. And why would you want to continue that lifestyle? Because that lifestyle is not as good. It's actually going to cause problems. Matthew 9:35 talked about the threefold ministry: teaching, proclaiming, and healing. And she said, we will see the medical missionary work broadening and deepening at every point of its progress because of the inflowing of hundreds and thousands of streams until the whole earth is covered as the waters cover the sea. This is why I know Christ is not coming back tomorrow. Christ is coming soon, but he's not coming tomorrow, because Christ makes it very clear he is not coming back until his servants take up his healing ministry and carry it around the world. It's the healing ministry where the gospel and salvation are tied in to people that would never come to your little Revelation seminar. And God wants the entire humanity to have the opportunity for salvation. And so I would encourage you, many of you from many different churches, please have your church take up the healing ministry and decide today to become a health reformer yourself. You won't be disappointed, and you will be so excited as you see souls multiply in your communities and in your churches. By the way, I would also encourage you, before I close, to go to those booths, those ASI booths, because those ASI booths, this is what ASI stands for, this threefold ministry, and these are the ones that are bringing in souls into Asia. They're bringing in souls in unreached areas of the world. They need our support. Government's not going to support them. But when we support organizations that are doing the Lord's will, he will multiply our funds so that we can continue to support God's work throughout the world. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for your healing ministry. We thank you that you have instructed us to come to you for the healing balms. We thank you for the sanitariums that are present throughout the world, where the gospel and the health message can go together. And now, Lord, I pray that if there's anyone here, as every head is bowed and every eye closed, if there's anyone here that realizes they don't have comprehensive self-control, and maybe they realize for the first time the reason why, there's been a selfish corner of their heart that they've not been willing to give over to you. They haven't been willing to put all on the altar for the pearl of great price. But as a result of this message, they decide, Lord, I don't want to be in the way of me getting premature disease. I don't want to be self-sabotaging, but further than that, I don't want to be standing in the way of the churches exploding with new growth because of the members that are only exhibiting selective self-control and not comprehensive self-control. May we be willing to meet the strongest foe we have to meet, and that is ourselves. And if you want to say to God today, I am willing now to put my all on the altar of sacrifice. I'm willing to serve you with all of my heart and soul and mind, to love you with everything that you have loved me with to my capacity, and love my neighbor as myself. Put my all on the altar of sacrifice and give up. Maybe it's a technology addiction. Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's marijuana. Maybe it's tobacco. Maybe it's unhealthy food, eating too much of the wrong types of food. Maybe it's not exercising. Whatever it might be that's standing in the way for us to have full health, if we are willing at this point to put our all on the altar of sacrifice and say, Lord, I want to choose comprehensive self-control, just raise your hand to God now. He will see it. Raise your hand and say, God, thank you for the love that you will pour into my heart. It's God's abounding love and presence in the heart that will give the power of self-control. And may we take up your healing ministry, as well as your teaching ministry and the proclamation of the gospel. And may each one that have raised their hands have many stars in their crown from this point forward. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.